Okay, well, hopefully, I can do this video and get the message across as to what happened. Unfortunately, the live stream Google Hangouts didn't work too well. Bit of audio problem there. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's following me, and I know that a lot of people who are following me, are reading the blogs, they're listening to the Podbean podcasts, and I really appreciate that, and that's really nice of you to support me like that. And also thank you to Radvus for chatting to me on my attempted live stream, which didn't quite work. It was nice to have a voice to chat to about this. So I'll briefly go over what happened with the tribunal case, and this is more for, I suppose this is particularly interesting to those who are going through the situation themselves with a tribunal case. So the tribunal case is in order to make sure that those who have suffered criminal injuries receive a compensation for that. And a criminal injury might be some kind of form of violence against somebody, and also a sexual assault like I had been a victim of. And there isn't any legal aid in Britain, so a lot of people don't bother chasing up the compensation. But the problem in not doing that is that they often provide, they often decline compensation on the basis that it didn't happen. Maybe there weren't any witnesses or something like that. And for someone who's suffered sexual assault, rape like I have, then it's really difficult to hear that reasoning, because obviously very few rapists rape in front of an audience. And also under our legal system, we don't need witnesses for a rape, and so it's quite insulting, especially when the person who has raped you is someone from a different culture. I wouldn't like to specify or attempt to assume which culture the perpetrator is from, but he spoke with broken English, and he looked sort of Pakistani Indian kind of male. So for me, the tribunal was important so that at least the crime was recognised for what it was, and I had disputed their first initial response, which was that I needed witnesses, and I disputed that on the basis of Sexual Offences Act doesn't require witnesses, and neither does the CICA require witnesses. So they agreed to let it go on that basis, but they said that I had reported the rape too late to the police. After 2 years it was that I reported the rape to the police, and I made the counterclaim that actually the rape took place a week after I had had brain surgery, and obviously I had to recover from brain surgery. And then once I had started to recover from that, I then started having recollections of what had happened to me. So yeah, it what they were asking was quite unreasonable, really. And that was what I was disputing in the tribunal case. I was saying that they should have given me a an allowance because I had gone through brain surgery the week after, and that was for a brain tumor. So um, an allowance on their part would absolutely be necessary. So the court case was a civil matter, so it wasn't in one of those scary type of medieval Gothic type of buildings which you see often, like the Old Bailey or anything like that. It was in what looked like newly built offices, basically. So that was quite useful, and that was less intimidating. When I got up to the rooms where the court proceeding would take place, there were a lot of men by the vending machine in suits, and they were obviously a group of solicitors. And again, that caused me to feel quite anxious, but it is a court, so they are going to be there. And then there were a lot of people in waiting to go into court who were wearing tracksuits. They're obviously going to the gym courts, the court gyms. Yeah, so they were in tracksuits, so it it wouldn't be something which I would ever think to wear for court proceedings, but obviously there are people who do. So then, yes, I got into the courtroom. There's an old man who was the judge, and either side of him, two elderly women. I mean, I say elderly; they were about in their 70s, sort of mid 70s, and they were professors and doctors, and all I could think to myself was that these people were academics. And when I think of academics, I think of people who love their political correctness and cultural Marxism. So that didn't feel particularly good, knowing that I was on my own up against trying to convince those sorts of people. Luckily, I didn't have to go into too much any detail about what had happened to me, which was good. But obviously, there is some overshadowing in that you do have to talk about it a little bit to explain what's happened and what have you. So they did ask me to explain why it took so long for me to come forward to the police. My first explanation was that obviously I'd had brain surgery, and I got very tearful because I was explaining why I had brain surgery, and because the tumor wasn't life-threatening, it wasn't. It may not have seemed like I needed to have brain surgery, but when I was explaining to them that I have a little boy, and I was responsible for my little boy, and he was at the time 18 months old, and I was having a lot of seizures. So in order to stop those seizures, I needed to go undergo that surgery, and that made me quite tearful. I'm not really sure why. I suppose it was about my son, so um, I probably feel quite protective about him, and hopeful that I'm doing the right thing for him and what have you. So I was explaining that made me very tearful. But they were, very kind. I'd read somewhere on the internet that they don't appreciate people who start crying, so I was particularly nervous about crying, but I couldn't really hold back those tears. So when I did get tearful, they were they seemed fine about it. So anyone else who's in that situation, I wouldn't worry too much about getting tearful in front of a judge. I don't think that it does any great harm, to be honest with you. After that, oh yes, at the beginning of the court case, or the tribunal case, I did ask if I could have, it recorded. Obviously, I'm a little bit skeptical about the legal system, and I'm not a great truster of them, to be honest with you. So I did ask if that could be recorded, and they did tell me that it wasn't legal to record these sorts of cases. So I had to leave that, but they did say that they would do. However, I suspected that they wouldn't, and at the end of the court case, they did say that it didn't record. So that's fine. I think that because I was on my own in the court case, I wanted some kind of witness, and obviously many of my family don't know about what happened, so that's one of the issues there. So yeah, mainly I was explaining why I had the surgery, the consequences of having that surgery. So I became incredibly forgetful. I had memory loss. Where I had surgery, it was in areas of the sensory strip. So that means, feeling things, being able to feel sensations and what have you. The motor strip, so my sense of motion had changed. I wasn't able to use escalators after the surgery. I'm still not able to use escalators because I've grown a fear of them, and I've also grown a huge fear of heights. So I have now vertigo as well. So I have there have been some drastic changes in my health, in what you might call mental health, although not necessarily in the same respect as what many people consider mental health. I also struggled with memory, so there were tests done before the surgery whereby they asked me to name as many words starting with a certain letter as possible within a minute, and I think that I was able to provide 60 words in a minute. And after the surgery, I could only remember 3 words, which is a considerable difference, and obviously that took me by shock because there was such a huge difference in my memory, and it was very obvious to me. What the CICA were claiming was that because I was working and I had started self-employment and my own business, having had the brain surgery, then I was fit to remember what had happened. I think representing myself was ideal for showing that I did have trouble with remembering things. So, for example, they said to me, you had, the solicitor said, when did you start your business? And I couldn't remember. And the judges had to go through all my medical records to try and recognize when it was that I started my own business. And I hadn't realized during the court case that I started my business when I had moved to a new area as well. So there was plenty of evidence during the tribunal which proved that I had such great difficulty in remembering even the most simplest things, like what year did I move? You know, most people know that what year they moved to a new home, and I couldn't remember. Um, and I had really a lot of trouble with remembering those sorts of things. So I think that worked to my benefit, but it also, the fact that I was self-representing also probably had a huge problem, maybe in my case, in that I didn't know what sort of questions to ask the solicitor. I didn't know what to ask the police when they were witnesses for the solicitor. The solicitor had asked them to come so that he could question them. All the questions which he asked, their answers were definitely in my favour. So I'm not sure how it's going to go. I think I was always confident that I had enough evidence to prove that I had, you know, that I was right and the solicitors were wrong. But in retrospect, you know, when I consider how prepared he was, and I thought at the time I was really prepared, but as soon as you start going through the whole you know, the whole proceedings, everything sort of gets muddled up. And I suppose in my mind I thought that it was going to go in a certain way, and it sort of went in the way that I was hoping it would, and I would talk about certain aspects, but the judge obviously wanted to lead the court proceedings, and that's for some reason I hadn't accounted that the judge would do that. And that's because I didn't realise that it would be a court. I thought that it would be a tribunal kind of case, which I had been in before, where there's a mediator, where there's mediation and everything like that. And this wasn't like that, and it really took me by surprise, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that I've won this case. What I am glad about is that I managed to explain to the judges that I didn't come forward in the last 3 months of not coming forward. I didn't come forward because I didn't trust the legal system, and I didn't trust the police, on the basis that political correctness has kind of caused great problems for society and for people who have experienced politically incorrect crimes like myself in coming forward. And I used Rotherham as an example, and I used lots of different examples which I've used on my vlog on YouTube, such as the girl who got arrested at the age of 14 for asking to be in another group. I'm not sure they'll take that into consideration, and because I got completely lost and overwhelmed and extremely anxious in the court, I don't think that I did the job which I was hoping to do. I don't think I did a good enough job, to be honest with you. I will be finding out the results later on in this week. Yeah, I'm really gutted by how it went. I'm really sad that I didn't get the recording, which I had hoped that I would get, and yeah, I'm disappointed with everything as it stands. What I am pleased about is that I had the courage to represent myself. I think that that was quite a big step, and I'm proud of myself for doing that. I'm also really proud that I kept telling the judges that actually I didn't report the crime because of the legal system. I think that they need to hear that kind of thing from the victims themselves. I don't think that it's useful for the solicitors to raise that point, because when I was speaking about it, my fear of coming forward and getting arrested, I was very upset when I spoke about it, and I was very tearful. And I think that if they see someone who is a victim of a crime who doesn't want to come forward because they fear how the police will react, then I think that it will help them take things more seriously and reflect on the issues which are going on in society with this multiculturalism that we have going on. And I don't have an issue with regards to different races being here, but when it becomes different cultures, and then when I'm reading up on the Equal Rights Act, like I am, and it's saying that there will be certain people in society who will get treated much better than others, then that becomes quite scary, reading that, and that's something that I want to discuss later on. It's really concerning for me, that is. I'm not sure that there's anything else which I can think of to mention at the moment. What I plan to do is just discuss the different issues which they raised, the CICA, which they raised, which I managed to argue against successfully. So I'll put those in a video. I'll do it in a vlog, in a blog as well, and hopefully we'll see how things go in the future. But yeah, thank you to everyone who is helping me and supporting me. It does mean a lot, especially since I don't actually have any friends or family who know about it. Obviously, I have friends and family, but I don't have anyone who knows about it. And that in itself is quite stressful, because I'm actively lying to them, or not lying, but omitting truths. So that's something that I'll have to consider in the future as well. But I suppose I'll do another video later on this week, or next week, when I hear the response. But I don't think that it's going to be a promising response. I don't think that I will have won this case, especially against a solicitor. Apparently, the judge did say that the solicitor had been very, very fair. The solicitor had said that if they believed that I hadn't remembered that the crime had taken place for 2 years, then he would, without a doubt, ensure that I received that compensation. Now, I don't know how normal a response that is from a solicitor. The judge had said that that was really kind of him to offer something so reasonable, which made me think that perhaps he'd been overly generous under my circumstances. But I don't know. I just don't know, because it's not something which I've ever dealt with before, and I don't know what those expectations are which people have to meet. Yes. Anyway, that's really all that there was to it, I guess. It was a very long journey. There's train strikes going on in the UK at the moment, so getting to all these different places was a nightmare, and it took 2 hours to get to the court, and it took 2 hours to get home, so it was really exhausting. And then when I got home, I wanted to do the live stream, which turned out bloody awful. That was a big fail. I'll have to delete that as well now. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting me. And you'll find me on Twitter, Social3state, and you'll find my blogs, which are really investigating into the law, because currently my life is consumed with the law, with this case going on, and there will be a further case as well. If I do win this case, and there will be a further case, a further battle based on how much compensation I will be receiving. So this is not the end of it. This is just midway through, really. Anyway, thank you ever so much for listening and supporting, and please check my blogs on social3state.com. Thank you very much. Bye.